All right, we will go ahead and get started now as people are still coming through. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I'm Sarah Walker, the Weldon Woods Project's Education Director. Thank you so much for joining us for our event with Ed Begley Jr., who will be in conversation about his new memoir, To the Temple of Tranquility and Step on It, with the Weldon Woods Project's Executive Director, Kathi Anderson. The signed book is also available in our online shop, as well as his previous book, Living with Ed. I'll put that link in the chat soon. And for those that do not know us, the Weldon Woods Project is a nonprofit based in Lincoln, Massachusetts, that preserves the land, literature, and legacy of Henry David Thoreau to foster an ethic of environmental stewardship and social responsibility. Our organization was founded in 1990 by recording artist Don Henley, and this April we will celebrate our 34th anniversary. This event is also co-sponsored by the Thoreau Farm. The Thoreau Farm Trust, a nonprofit organization, is committed to preserving Thoreau's birthhouse and promoting Thoreau's
Living with Ed that offer tips for a sustainable lifestyle and inspire all of us to make modest adaptations to help conserve our natural resources and reduce our carbon footprint. There is no one who rivals Ed in walking the walk when it comes to protecting our planet. I have had the good fortune to be Ed's friend for well over 30 years. We met during the very early days of the Weldon Woods Project back in 1990. Ed was one of the first people to join our organization's advisory board. Not long thereafter, he became a member of our board of directors and has held that position ever since. His wisdom, passion, generosity of spirit, patience, and good humor have contributed mightily to our organization's success and effectiveness. Time doesn't afford me the chance to recount all the achievements of a man whose life has been, dare I say, like a Hollywood movie, one enriched by an ever-growing circle of family and friends, some of whom are featured in his book. When I first sat down in a comfortable chair with Ed's book in my hand, I had the intent to dive into it for an initial hour or two. Well, 10 hours later, I stopped reading, and only because I had read the entire book at one sitting. It's truly a page turner, as Ed guides us seamlessly through an honest and unvarnished accounting of his first 74 years, alternating between poignant or surprising life experiences and hysterical misadventures, several of which you will hear about this evening. But many more await you on the pages of To the Temple of Tranquility and Step on It. So Ed, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to start by asking you, what prompted you to write the book? When did you start thinking about writing your memoir? Why? And I'm also interested in the title you chose for the book, which is really an unusual one.
I'll get to the title, but thank you. I got to say, Kathi, thank you so much for having me on this wonderful webinar, talking about important matters. And also, in addition, my book. You've been doing such a wonderful job with the Weldon Woods Project for so many years, and to assemble great writings of Thoreau and to protect so much acreage and have thousands and thousands of young people become exposed to the works of Thoreau. It's an extraordinary job you've done, and I'm just proud to know you. So thank you so much for having me. Thoreau certainly inspired me to write a bit in my life. But this book is a different matter. It started innocently enough and had nothing to do with the book. My daughter Hayden, who's now 24, I guess she was about 22 when this happened. She came to me armed with her device, with her cell phone, saying, I'd like to, record some of the stories you told me about your father, my grandfather, she would indicate, and different, my grandfather came over in a boat from Ireland and all of that. And in addition, maybe some Hollywood stories about this one and that you've encountered over the years. I've heard some good stories from your dad. So start going, and here we go. I'm rolling right now. And we started to record some stuff. And, but she's a busy young lady and she couldn't do that endlessly. So I thought I'd start taking notes on my computer, just type some stuff up to submit to her so she could put this thing together to give to her and her brother and sister and to my grandkids. It was just for the family. And that's when it happened. The computer keyboard became like a Ouija board that actually worked, that was real, that did something. The keyboard suddenly took me to the attic of my mind and the basement of my mind, these different things I hadn't thought of in many years, trying to fill in the gaps from what I told her on her device. And I realized very quickly that I didn't want to do it to bother her with it or to do it with anybody else. I wanted to write it myself and perhaps submit it as a book. And in that time, a wonderful agent, David Vigliano, came to me, a literary agent, and said, I think there's a market for a book by you and I'll get you a ghostwriter. I said, no, I want to do it myself. Let me keep writing and I'll submit it to you. And that's how it started. It was just an archive of different materials from my family. That's all it was. Oh, the title, I promised I'd tell you the title. Those are words. The title is actually a sentence uttered by a wonderful actor named Dick Stahl. He was a wonderful improv actor on stage with a committee on Sunset Boulevard and in many movies and TV shows. But in this case, he was not in front of a camera or an audience. He had planned this trip to the Far East to get enlightenment after the Beatles had seen the Maharishi and been influenced by the Maharishi. He wanted to get enlightenment, so he planned this trip, very type A personality guy like me, and everything went wrong. So by the time he missed the plane out of, LA to Hawaii, then he missed the connection to the Philippines, then it was monsoon season, he got there late to the island, and he's running up the dock and he hops in a taxi and he says to the driver, to the Temple of Tranquility, and step on it. And the driver started to laugh and he started to laugh. And it seemed as absurd as it was. And it's definitely a big part of the book and my life, because I tried to rush serenity. You can't rush serenity, as you know, and you certainly can't find enlightenment or serenity in a bottle of vodka. And I tried both. They didn't work out so well.
Well, speaking of vodka,
this is tea, I promise you.
You write very openly and honestly about a period of your life when you were battling addiction, and I was very intrigued about the different influences that you tapped into, whether it be experiences or individuals, that prompted you to make some of the pivotal decisions in your life. I mean, by this, I mean your decision to, pursue a career in acting, decision to get and stay sober. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, from 1971 through 1978, I drank a quart of vodka nearly every day. I mean, 300 plus days a year, I drank a full quart of vodka, took different pills and what have you in combination with that liquor. Not a good idea. And I somehow operated a vehicle. The big miracle is that I lived through that. And more importantly, that I didn't injure or kill somebody else. That's the big miracle. Had I harmed myself, that would have been poetic justice. But the idea of hurting some other people who had nothing to do with my dilemma and my abuse, that always, even in my drunkenness and addiction, I knew that was a horrible thing, and it frightened me every day. Yet I continued. That's what people do. They continue even though they know they're hurting their family, their spouse, their children, their boss, their work ethic. But we do it, and fortunately, a lot of people get recovery. And there's different groups out there where there's a saying, "I can't, but we can," and that's true for the environment, to clean up the air in LA, or to clean up the ocean water off Santa Barbara where the oil spill happened in 1969, or to clean up the Cuyahoga River. I can't clean it up myself, but we can. So it was ironic that I was trying to clean up all this pollution throughout the 70s, starting with the first Earth Day. And I was so polluted, if you will, myself, the irony is not lost on me.
You actually mentioned your father, you having a conversation, and I'm not going to remember the exact thing he said, but you wrote that, he said you've got to be for something. You're against a lot. You were kind of young, rebellious, and he said you got to be for something. You got to do something. You got to be engaged in making change. Um, there were, I'm sure, other factors that inspired you to become an environmental advocate on so many important issues. What were some of the factors that, and you mentioned just now some of the reasons, but were there certain environmental issues that you just felt, I just can't sit back and take a pass on this. I've got to be part of the solution?
There were certain factors that led me to get involved in 1970, some negative and some positive. I'll start with the negative. Living in smoggy LA, that's enough. That'll get anybody involved. Horrible choking smog from, the time I was born at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital in 1949 till, many years later in my life, many years being 1970, the first Earth Day, I got involved back then. So 20 years of breathing that horrible choking smog, I was ready to do something to help in 1970. So that the negative influence was living with the smog and going down to the ocean off Santa Barbara, the California coast, and seeing the horrible pollution from the Santa Barbara oil spill, and not seeing it other than in pictures, not going there, but hearing about the Cuyahoga River catching fire. I thought that's a bad sign, I think, when rivers catch fire. Rivers are supposed to put out fires and not catch fire themselves. So all that, the negative got me involved. But then the positive was even more compelling. And you mentioned my father, and that was the big positive in my life at that point. He was a conservative Republican, and I am not, but he was a great man and a great father. And he had lived through the Great Depression. He was the son of Irish immigrants. He didn't use the word environment much, but he was one. And when I'd complain about the smog, he'd say, Eddie, I know what you're against. I don't like the smog either, but what are you for? What are you doing about it? Are you going to take the bus more, ride your bike to create less smog? Are you going to drive an electric car one day when they have them? What are you doing to do something? So back in 1970, I got involved and started to do something. I was also in Boy Scouts, so I got to see nature up close and personal and realized it was something I wanted to protect. So all those positive influences certainly helped me too. And so 1970, I was a broken, struggling actor. My dad had just passed away within a few days of the first Earth Day, by the way. So I wanted to do a lot of these things to honor him. And so I started recycling. I started composting. I became a vegetarian. I always rode my bike. I rode it even more. I always took public transportation. I rode it even more. And so I did everything I could. I even bought a 1970 electric car, and people think I'm making that up. Electric car in 1970, hogwash. Well, as you probably know, Henry Ford's wife preferred her Baker Electric to his noisy contraption. And they had electric cars back in 1910. But Jay Leno has one of those as a very expensive, old car. But I certainly didn't get one of those. I got a Taylor Dunn electric car, but I should really say it's an electric cart with a T at the end. It was like a golf cart with a windshield wiper and a horn. It only went about 20 miles of range and 25 miles an hour, but it was very nice. When it was raining, I didn't have to go on my bike, or when a smoggy day, I could ride around in it. And so all this stuff that I did also saved me money. So I stayed with it. And now the good news, Kathi, and you probably know this, from 1970 to date, we have 4 times the cars in LA, millions more people, but a fraction of the smog. We've done a wonderful job. There's still, not everybody's been relieved of this problem. There's still bad air around the shipping centers of, the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, around the fulfillment centers where, different like Amazon fulfillment centers and other places where they, warehouses and what have you. People near there are still suffering some smoggy air, but overall it's much, much cleaner because everything that we hoped would work did work. Catalytic converters on vehicles, cleaner power plants, all that stuff. So we've proven that we can do it. Now we have to set about doing it for a global issue, which is climate change.
Now, I remember some of the years that the days when we were able to have face-to-face board meetings more often rather than virtual ones. There were times that you drove cross country. I don't know, was your electric car or a hybrid, but you literally drove so that you wouldn't have to fly and, you know, leave a bigger carbon footprint. Or you took the train, or I mean, you're just an enormously committed person, and I really, really admire you so much for that. I think we all have to do so much more. And I'll just briefly say, in an ironically, sadly ironically, our organization has joined many others. So we're fighting the expansion of an absolutely horrible proposal to quadruple the infrastructure for luxury private jet aircraft at a nearby airport. Aircraft that are not only flying over Walden Pond, but are one of the biggest causes of carbon emissions on the planet. So, I mean, there's no shortage of battles. But you were very early on a person that was bringing these issues to everyone's attention, that we just have to change our lifestyle. And that was even before most of us understood the you know, the issue of climate change. Anyway, on a lighter note, let's move on for a second about you know, one thing about your book, one of many that I just love, is that it really goes back and forth between a lot of very personal, very serious issues, but some lighter ones in the context of people that you've met and in your life, which are many and varied and really quite extraordinary, and as well as the experiences that you've had. So I wonder if you could share a couple of your funniest and most unlikely encounters with famous people. What are a couple that, you know, there are so many, but if you can pick a couple to just share with us, that would be great.
Well, I realized back in the 70s that I was put in these incredible situations with these people that I had so idolized, you know, and I wondered who invited me? How did I get into this room? I was like that character in that Woody Allen movie, Zelig, that, you know, is in the background of Yalta, and this is based on a real person, I'm told, or maybe Forrest Gump or what have you, running through these different, you know, and appearing in these different historic moments in time. I really felt like that. And I had the good fortune to meet people like Cindy Williams, who passed away about a year ago, a dear friend of mine. She was on Laverne and Shirley, but also a very successful film actress who was in American Graffiti, Travels with My Aunt, Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. So I met her. Because of her, I met Harry Geddes, who's best friends with Jack Nicholson. And so I met Cass Elliot and I met Buck Henry, and all those people were friends for a while. And this kid from the Valley is coming over the hill to Harry Giddis's house, and suddenly I'm introduced to this one, that. And that's the way it was all along. One afternoon, I'm having lunch with Harry Nilsson. And Harry Nilsson said, "You want to have dinner with some friends tonight? Una and I are going to have dinner with friends. Do you want to join us?" I said, "Sure." Una was Harry Nilsson's wife, the great singer. I'm sure a lot of people know who I'm talking about. He sang, you know, at the end of Midnight Cowboy, "Everybody's Talking at Me." He's the one that recorded that wonderful song. Great singer, great songwriter. But he said, "Dinner with friends." I said, "Sure." Then we go over to the hotel, and the hotel we're going to meet his friends. Sorry, not a hotel. It's an apartment, a very swanky apartment complex called the Dakota. And going up in the elevator, I went, I know he has some friends. The only people I can think of that live at the Dakota are, and then he knocks on the door's open, and right there answering their own door is John and Yoko. "Hello, come on in." how are you? Good to see you. And then Harry and he are old pals, so they're embracing. He said, look, I know you. What's your name? I said, Ed Begley. I'm just trying to keep my face from cracking and crystallizing and falling onto the floor. There's John and Yoko, and no help. No, Yoko's made up a wonderful macrobiotic meal. We're sitting there. I'm trying to compose myself. And he keeps looking at me. John Lennon finally says, Yoko, it's Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. It's a deaf mute. It's Steve from Mary Hartman. Look at it. And they're like fans to me, about what's Louise Lasser like and Norman Lear, and tell me about this one and that one and Mary Kay Place. And it's just crazy. And I realized that he was just a regular guy that wanted to be treated like a regular guy. And that happened again and again. Let's meet some friends at the Navarro Hotel off Central Park. And the friends that you want me to meet that day was Monty Python, my dear friend Eric Idle and Graham Chapman, who's no longer with us. And that's just the way it was. I met Harry Nilsson, so I met all these wonderful people. And I met Ringo through him and met several Beatles. And I just feel like the luckiest man alive to encounter these incredible artists. I cherish it to this day.
Gosh, it's fantastic. You must have, I think I would have needed oxygen when that door opened, and
I know.
Stood
standing right there, no help, nothing, just, walking in the park unattended. Their ease around people at the end became an unfortunate undoing, because he so trusted people. They both did. They just walked through Central Park with no security, nobody else, and very sweet and wonderful people all.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. One of the I don't know if we should even bring this up, but it really was kind of funny. So there was a time that you went with a friend of yours. Was it I forget which friend of yours, you have so many, persuaded you to go with him to visit some friends of his to smoke a joint up in the hills.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's my friend James Jeremiah. He said, let's go visit my friend David Kurland, a wonderful artist. He did some great work. And he lived in a tree house near a saloon, if that makes any sense. But it was the 60s. It was 1968. So we smoked a joint with him, because that's what you did back then. But he didn't have any more dope, and we didn't bring any with us. So he said, we'll go up to the main house, and they have some good pot there. And we smoked a joint with some people, just very normal, kind of hippie looking people. They seemed fine, and a little bit of conversation. One of them had some songs that they had written, and they recognized my name as, the name of Ed Begley. I'm Junior, but they knew my father's work. So, do you know anybody that could listen to my songs and help me? And I said, I really don't. I'm starting to try to get in the acting world, but I don't know a lot of people in music at this point. And we went back to the car, parked near the saloon and the treehouse. And I don't know if I mentioned, but the saloon was not a real saloon. It was a part of a movie set at a place called the Spahn Ranch. And some people might know what that means. The family in that house was the Manson family. A year later, we saw in the newspaper very clearly, one's memory is pretty good at this point. I was 20 years old. And there is all these people we had met, this one and that. The Manson gang were in the newspaper because they had been apprehended for having, done the horrible, horrible Tate LaBianca murders. Those unfortunate people who met that kind of an end. And so it's just that kind of crazy stuff that happened. Or charging my car at O.J. Simpson's house for years, when I'd go over to a party there, plugging in, he'd say, Cato will show you, just plug it in the wall there. And yes, I'm talking about that, Cato. I'm talking about that wall. And just kind of all very odd. How did I wind up, again, it's like Zelig, how did I wind up in this situation? Getting advice on how to cover things if you've done something horrible like murder. And that advice came from one Robert Blake. He had all sorts of advice about how to dump the firearm and what have you, and what to put on your hands to hide the gun smoke, the gunpowder residue and what have you, and make sure you throw it in a dumpster. So very odd stuff.
Talk about crime. There was something interesting that happened with your trash.
Yeah, at some point, Kathi, I began to wonder what kind of energy am I putting out that I'm winding up in these situations with the people I meet, and then this unfortunate story. All the stuff I'm talking about now is so grim, I won't dwell on it. I'll make it quick. But basically, the neighbor from across the alley came. She smelled something that was bad, and I smelled it too. We looked around. It was my trash can. And then they later found there was a body in that trash. You know, how did that happen? Why my trash can? I was like, and that actually was kind of at the beginning of my 71 through 78 alcoholic spree. At that point, it was actually after that, Kathi, now that I think about it, I thought, you know what? I need a drink. I just can't handle this stuff with all this crazy stuff that's happening. And I set about numbing myself, which is not a good idea, because then you don't feel the bad, but you don't feel the good either. And more importantly, you don't learn from your bad experiences. You don't learn anything because you're numb. So you don't experience anything. They say when you started drinking, you know, you're the same age. If you are fortunate enough to get sober, which I did at age 29, you know, you're the age you were when you started. So I was basically like a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old when I got sober in 1979, when in fact I was in the body of a 30-year-old person.
Gosh. All right. So on a completely different subject, looking at the many wonderful photographs that you have included in your book, they're all fantastic. One of the most poignant for me was taken when you were a pallbearer at Cesar Chavez's funeral. And can you talk about how you met Cesar Chavez and how you became involved with United Farm Workers?
Yes, there were some people I went to college with, Bill Malloy and Jan Fisher, great people, and they were better educated on important causes, social justice and what have you. And so they made me aware of what was going on with United Farm Workers and Cesar Chavez. I heard some of it on the news and read about it a bit in the papers, but they knew more about it than me. And there was a way to support them, first of all, by not buying lettuce, no lechuga, no lettuce, no uvas, no grapes. I stopped buying grapes, what have you, and stopped buying lettuce. But also there was a strike fund, so we sent a little bit of money to help out the farm workers. But now flash forward from this time at Valley College in the late 60s, now it's 1985 or something. I can't remember. Let's say 85, and I'm going to LAX or coming from it. I don't remember. I stopped for a bowl of oatmeal at a restaurant called Pan's, P-A-N-N-S, two N's, I think. And I'm there having my oatmeal, and a car pulls up, kind of a very normal car and not in the best condition. But this guy gets out. He looks just like Cesar Chavez, and I know it can't be him because it's kind of a beat up car. And then I quickly realized that's exactly the kind of car that Cesar Chavez would be driving. He was not driving, his friend Irv was driving, but he wouldn't be in a limo or anything or a fancy car. He was an internationally known labor leader, but he lived very, very simply. He did not ever try to get rich himself with any of the good work that he did. He was just trying to fight for the rights of the farm workers. And when he walked to his table with this fellow, I'll soon learn his name is Irv, he walked past me and I went, that's definitely Cesar Chavez. I knew what he looked like. So after they order and before the food came, because I didn't want to bother them, I just came over and said, Mr. Chavez, I helped out in the grape boycott and the lettuce boycott, from a distance, but I certainly tried to help with the strike fund and what have you. And if you ever need any help, I gave him my business card. And he found it amusing because my business card, like it is the same thing today, it says Ed Begley Jr. since 1949. And so he thought that was funny. And he called me up and I got involved with different matters there at the United Farm Workers and helped him on pesticide issues. So I had the great sadness, the incredible sadness, but also the honor of carrying his coffin through the streets of Delano when he passed in 1993. One of the greatest heroes I've ever met.
So back to your film career and your television career. Being here in Massachusetts, and I know there's a lot of people from Massachusetts joining us this evening, but not just people from Massachusetts, people everywhere, I'm sure would love to hear about your experiences on the St. Elsewhere. Tell us about how you got that role and what it was like working with such a stellar cast, and you know, just shed some light on those years of your life.
This was 1982, and I'd done a bit of work. I was in The In-Laws. I was in a movie called Going South with Jack Nicholson. I was in Blue Collar with Richard Pryor, Harvey Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto. So I'd done some work, but I wasn't anything like a name actor. I was a nameette. So I go and interview for this part, the part of Dr. Peter White on St. Elsewhere. And I didn't get it. And I was crestfallen because I wanted to be in the show, because this television script was better than any movie script I had ever read for. It was really a great, great script. So I felt very bad. My agent called me back and said, you know what, they want you to read for, no, I didn't even have to read. They just offered me the part, a much smaller part that was not a regular. They kind of threw me a bone, gave me a very small part with just 2 lines in the pilot. Not Peter White, not a regular character like that, but a character that was in 1 episode. I jumped at the chance, of course. I said, you know, if things click, maybe there'll be another episode or 2 down the line. And I started to work on that show with that part. It instantly became kind of a bit of chemistry with the actor William Daniels, who's much shorter than me, and I'm 6'4", and he's a good deal shorter than that. And the kind of Mutt and Jeff angle and all of that, they thought was funny. And the character of Dr. Peter White winds up getting shot in season 2 or 3, and he's dead and gone. My character was in every episode but 1, and that's just the way it's been my whole life. What I wanted was nothing compared to what I actually got, Kathi. You know, I wanted one thing, but it wasn't the thing that I was destined for. It was going to be better than what I had ever hoped for, and it's been that way my whole life, in and out of show business. I'm just blessed.
I suppose this question is like asking somebody to choose their favorite child, but what is your favorite film or TV show that you've had a part in?
I have several children and several grandchildren, so I would never pick a favorite, but I'll give you a list of some of the ones that are so dear to me. Spinal Tap is one of the best movies I've ever been in, and I don't even say a line. I don't say one word. I just play the drums for 15 seconds or something in that wonderful movie. That's a great movie. I'm also in a movie called The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. What a great movie. Just wonderful, wonderful film. I was also in a movie with the incredible actress, the incredible talent, and the incredible person, Meryl Streep. That's called She-Devil. So that was an honor and just, you know, an amazing experience to work with someone that gifted. Those are some of the films. The TV shows, St. Elsewhere's got such a dear, important place in my heart because it was not only wonderful scripts, you know, with Ed Flanders, Bill Daniels, Bonnie Bartlett, Denzel Washington, Howie Mandel, David Morris, these great actors, Mark Tinker, great director, great writer, John Macias, you know, Josh Brand, John Falsey. It was that great experience for 6 years, great material for 6 years. So that's got a great place. But then I got to also be on 6 Feet Under. I got to be on Better Call Saul. And, you know, it's been said that the era that my dad started at in television, that was considered the golden age of television. Pat Chayefsky was a writer that time, writing television plays and what have you. And I think that's true. That was the golden age of television. Now I think we're in the platinum age of television. You have shows like Better Call Saul and Handmaid's Tale and Breaking Bad. These are as good as any movie I've been to. So I got to be part of some great shows like that, and I just feel blessed. I'm a very lucky guy. I won the lottery. I didn't even buy a ticket.
So aside from your wonderful family and friends, what personal or professional achievement in your life brings you the most satisfaction, most pride?
I'm very happy with the work I did in a movie called A Mighty Wind. It's a Christopher Guest movie. And I mentioned wonderful movies like Spinal Tap, in which Chris Guest is there with me on screen, and Michael McKean and what have you. And then later Harry Shearer is in the band, and that's great. But A Mighty Wind and Best in Show, those are some of the best films I've ever seen, let alone been in. So I must include those too. That was a great experience to be in A Mighty Wind. Just wonderful. It just all clicked. You know, Chris Guest is so smart and so funny himself. To be in a film with Parker Posey, you know, and Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, just amazing people. I just feel blessed when I get to be in the same room with folks like that. It's a gift.
I want to switch over to your you know, your personal life a bit, and especially interested in you know, you recently built, along with Rochelle, a phenomenal home that is, I believe, platinum LEED
It is a
certified.
platinum rated home. Yes, we achieved platinum, which is no small feat.
I don't know if people, everyone on this this presentation on the Zoom is familiar with how difficult it is to achieve platinum certification, but it's really, really tough. And it relates to all the measures that one has to take to, you know, preserve natural resources, stop emissions, just a whole array of environmental criteria that are challenging to meet. So I'd love to learn a little bit about the process of building the house, and I think it probably attests to the strength of your marriage that you and Rochelle went through this project and are still happily together, because I imagine it was fraught with challenges. I just redid my kitchen and I almost had a nervous breakdown. So I know what it must have been to build an entire house that's LEED certified. So can you talk about that a bit?
It was a long process, but the LEED requirements were not, you know, the only reason it took a while. But I was just dedicated. I went, if I'm not going to do it, Ed Begley's not going to do it. Who's going to get LEED certification for a residential building? You know, because it's done a lot more frequently for people in commercial buildings. It's somehow easier to do, or there's a better return on investment or something, because you look at the numbers, there's more commercial, you know, structures that do it, but residential, it can be tough. But we did everything. I mean, it came down to getting points for having a little stool by the front door, a little bench, I should say, where you could take your, and are kind of motivated to take your shoes off. That helps indoor air quality. You get like half a point for that. It's stuff, small stuff like that, and big stuff for what they call the envelope of the house, which is a big one, which we definitely got right. We did that very well, as good as you can do it. The walls are 12 inches thick, and every bit of glass is double pane. So it's a great envelope with which you want to heat and cool at different times of the year. With passive solar design, all the glass on the home, you know, the big areas of glass on the home are all facing south. So it gets warmer in the winter, then cooler in the summer, because the sun is straight up and not shining into the room. Simple stuff like that people rarely think about. But whatever level you come into LEED, and for the people who don't know anything about LEED, it's basically miles per gallon for you know, like a vehicle, but for a home, you know, and it's leadership in energy and environmental design. That's the LEED. And there's silver, gold, and platinum. Whatever level you can afford to get into it, I think it's worth your while, because over the life of the house, you know, you're going to save a lot of money. People say, what did that home cost? Most people understandably say, well, let me look at the labor and the materials. That's what the home cost. No, what the home cost over the lifetime is the way you have to look at it. What did it cost to heat and cool that home over many decades, which hopefully it will last? And we built the home out of steel, so it's going to last a long, long time. No termite damage, no water damage, no mildew. You know, it's very good in an earthquake, because rather than nailed together, things are screwed together, the different metal pieces of the frame. So it was a little more time intensive, a little more money in some areas, but it was definitely worth it, because this is a house that will be around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And, you know, if we're still here hundreds of years from now, maybe covered with vines and what have you, and different creatures to be living here. But the house, I believe, the structure will probably be here for a while.
When did you finish and move in?
We moved in 2016, August of 2016.
I knew it was somehow I thought it was a little bit more recently. Um,
But I love it. It was worth every minute of it, whatever it took. I'm very happy. I love my architect. I love my contractor. I love them all. Long run, it did great.
Again, you and Rochelle collaborated on a couple of television shows, but the one I'm thinking of is Living with Ed, and which I loved, by the way. And
Me too.
it yeah, really was. It was just a wonderful, wonderful program. But among the many reasons it was wonderful is that you gave people incentives to make, fairly modest changes that anybody could do in their life to be greener and to, maybe we're not all going to be able to build a lead certified home, but there are things that we all can do, and they make a difference. So can you maybe talk about a couple of things that everyday folk can do to to help the planet?
That was the joy of the show, really, for me. The joyous part of the show for me was hearing from people on the street, hearing from people by email. Different people would write letters and what have you, old school letters about, I bought the solar oven. I really like how the pot stays level because it's got this little gimbal mount on it, so it doesn't spill over and it's got a little thermometer inside the solar oven. I go, wait a minute. They actually really did it because they know these details about the solar oven. They're not just trying to curry favor with me. I bought a solar oven. No, I didn't, but I wanted to sign my book, whatever. People really did all these things. You could tell by the way they had their details right. And that gave me a great sense of pride that people were exposed to these things. And besides the LEED Platinum house that I built and all that fancy pants stuff, people can do many things themselves. People would regularly come up to me during the show and after the show was off the air for a while and say, I can't afford to put solar up on my roof like you, but I want to do something one day. I can't afford to drive a fancy electric car like you, but I want to do something. I said, I couldn't when I started either. You don't run up to the top of Mount Everest. You get to base camp and you get acclimated and you climb as high as you can. Not everybody's going to make it to the summit. Can you afford a light bulb? Can you afford an energy saving thermostat? Can you afford to recycle? Can you take public transportation if it's available near you? Can you do some home composting? Can you ride a bike if weather and fitness permit? These are all cheap things that anybody can do, and they will see instant return on their investment. They will save money right away. I mean, payback on an energy saving thermostat is like 3 to 6 months. Payback on riding a bike or public transportation is instantly. It's that day, and on and on. So pick the low hanging fruit first. Do what you can, and go to Begley.com if you forget the things as I listed right now. We have them listed at edbegley.com and elsewhere. But just there's many other good sites that have it. Just energy saving tips that are cheap, or environmental tips that are cheap. Any way you want to write it up, enter it. You're going to get some good suggestions like the ones I just made.
And we do have copies of your book available if people living like Ed, people wish to learn more about things that we can all do, because we all need to be part of the solution. I'm going to ask one last question, then turn to other questions from that have come in. There's a wide range of opinion from people about the future for humanity, and particularly in the context of the existential threat of climate change and the many other environmental impacts that we are dealing with today, coupled with other pressing problems like social reform and human rights. And we have a lot going on in this planet. Some people, like the wonderful Jane Goodall, is just so optimistic, full of hope, and inspiring. for that. But then there are other people who are kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think I fall maybe a little bit toward the Jane Goodall end of things, but still pretty close to the middle. I have my good days and bad, and I think a lot of people feel that way. How do you feel about the future? Are we going to leave our kids and grandkids a livable planet?
I call Jane Goodall a friend of mine, and she is that. Her Roots and Shoots program is extraordinary. It helps young people, all people across the globe, to do something and make a change in the environment for the good. So she's amazing, and I'm often optimistic, and certainly optimistic in all the things that she cites where we have had some success. But I also try to be realistic when people talk about other matters. You know, we're unfortunately going to lose a good many plant and animal species. We've lost a good many so far. E.O. Wilson was a friend of yours and Don's, and he was a friend of mine. I had the good fortune to hear his wisdom about it, and we've lost a lot already, but we have to, for our own survival, hang on to what remains. You know, there's so much that we can save, so you don't want to just say, it's so bad, I'm going to give up. You want to hang on to what remains. And Paul Ehrlich said it very well, too. How many rivets can you lose from an airplane before it ceases to fly? 3? 23? We learned just a week or two ago with that airplane over Portland, Oregon, that lost just 4 or 5 bolts maybe that held it into the frame of the airplane, the fuselage, that, you know, in some cases just 4 or 5 bolts. And those bolts represent the many plant and animal species that we're losing every day. We can't remain aloft and successful as a species, Homo sapiens, if we continue to lose these important rivets in the airplane that keeps us aloft. You know, there's a web of life that supports us all. And to be derisive of that, to neglect that, to not consider that, you do that at your own peril. And we need that to, you know, people look at land, they think it's idle, you know, because it hasn't been developed. They go, well, I get my money from a factory, so I want to put a factory up here. That's where I get my paycheck. That's not really where you get your paycheck. You get your paycheck from healthy soil and clean water and sunshine and plant and animal species. That's how we all get our paycheck. The other stuff is just home shopping network stuff that you don't really need. So people have to have some reverence for nature and find the good news. And Jane cites a good deal of it. And I can cite a lot of it too. Like the air is better in LA. The Cuyahoga River does not catch fire anymore. The Hudson River is so polluted you couldn't eat the fish. That's a productive fishery now, much cleaner than the Hudson River. We can do this. We have to do it globally. Otherwise, we won't survive, and many other species won't survive. We had the ability as Homo sapiens to alter the planet the way we have. We also have the ability to clean it up. And I have to correct a misconception that people have had about me over the years. I'm always talking about get the light bulbs and get the thermostat. And if you can afford it, get an electric car. You can afford it, get solar panels. And all that's well and good, personal action. But I assumed everybody knows that you can't just stand on one leg. You have to have something stable. In this case, it's a tripod that's keeping things steady and successful. The tripod, the 3 columns of environmental success. One is personal action, because then you have the credibility to go in to the Air Resources Board or the AQMD in California and say, I'm doing this. What can we do to make things better? You need good legislation, like the Clean Air Act. That's how we clean up the air in LA. Wasn't for me riding my bike. Good legislation, the Clean Air Act, signed by Richard Nixon, by the way. Yep. So personal action, good legislation, and 3rd, corporate responsibility. Need companies to make the better light bulbs, make the better thermostats, make the better cars, make the cleaner power plants. And they're all 3 tied together like a tripod. They meet in the middle, they're tied together. If you go before the Air Resources Board and you say, I got here with no pollution, they're kind of humble to try to make things move forward. You know, if they have greener cars available, the manufacturers, the businesses, then I'm able to buy them, et cetera. They all interrelate, but it isn't just from old white guys like me buying light bulbs and, you know, clean cars. It's from good legislation and corporate responsibility. And we have to give equal importance to all 3.
Well put. Thank you. So Ed has graciously agreed to stay longer than 8 o'clock, which we had planned to end. So because I see we have a queue of questions, and so we'll try to take as many as possible. I'll turn this back to Sarah with gratitude to Ed for a wonderful, stimulating discussion on his life and the life of the planet. So,
And I'm not going away, but my dog, just 1 second. I have to let her out. I'm going to be away for 8 seconds. 1 second.
all righty.
And just a reminder to everyone to put your questions in the Q&A box. We have over a
Thank you,
dozen
Sarah.
there.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And thank you, Kathi. We're moderating such a wonderful discussion. Bless you, Kathi Anderson. I love you so much.
Mutual Admiration Society.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry. Yep. I'm just going to jump right in and read from the top, Ed and Kathi, if it's good with you guys.
Yep.
All right. So you are such an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story and all the good deeds. Could you please share some stories on the luminous Cindy Williams and also Olivia Newton-John?
They're asking about Cindy Williams and Olivia Newton-John. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
I met Cindy Williams at the wrap party, not the wrap party, a Christmas party for a show called Room 222. Might be some people around my age that remember that show. It was a very edgy show for its time in 1969 when I first started to work on it. In 1970, I did a few more episodes. It was created by one James L. Brooks, a name you probably heard, who did, Terms of Endearment, directed that from that Larry McMurtry novel and what have you. Did a number of As Good as It Gets, wonderful movies and TV shows. Taxi was his show, and on and on. A great man, a great friend. He created that show, and I worked on that and met Cindy Williams, and I was in love right away. She was a wonderful actress and a wonderful person. And now the story, and I'll talk about Olivia too, of course, but I want to spend a moment on Cindy because she just passed away a year ago, and she and I were very, very close. I took her out on a date, Sarah, in my electric car. Now, keep in mind, this was not electric car, as I just said. It was electric cart with a T on the end. I didn't understand the difference at the time. So I hadn't fully charged it or something, or there was too much of a hill going up to the restaurant. I think there was a kid on big wheel passing us by. There was a butterfly that passed us by on the way to the restaurant. So there was not a second date. It wasn't exactly, a female magnet, this vehicle. It was not a hot rod or anything impressive. So we became friends, and I talked to her children all the time, her wonderful children, Zach and Emily, a dear, dear friend. And she was in not just that wonderful TV show, Laverne and Shirley, but she was in Travelers with My Aunt. She was in The Conversation, American Graffiti, and lots of wonderful TV as well. And she's just was a wonderful person. And she cared deeply about the environment too. Olivia Newton-John was a dear friend of mine too. We began working together in the early 90s on different environmental causes with a woman named Bonnie Reese, who was a group called ECHO, Earth Communications Office. And she worked with them, and I worked with them to put forward environmental messaging, into different musical works and films and television, what have you. She was a great lady, and we're all the poorer from losing her. She was a dear, dear friend, and I miss her still. Olivia and Cindy, both wonderful powerhouse ladies, both of them. So talented.
Thank you, Ed. And next question. And so people are saying these very nice things, so I'm going to read them so you hear them. I found this section of the book on Cesar Chavez uniquely powerful. Any chance we can persuade you to write a sequel focused on the many folks you've interacted with in the activist universe, from tree people to the UFW?
I've been thinking about that. I have another book percolating in my mind. So if this one does okay, maybe the publisher will still be speaking to me. And if I, over time, sell enough copies, maybe there'll be another chapter in this story. I certainly have some ideas of what to do next. So let's see how I do with this one. But thank them. So I will thank them myself right now for asking about that. I would love nothing better than to do that book as they suggest.
And you hinted on this a little bit before with Kathi, but how can we make the changes that are really needed now, as it pertains to climate change?
Just keep that three-pronged approach to it, you know. Do whatever you can do in your lifestyle that is a green choice, do that. But find some time if you can, if not during the week, because you work long hours on the weekends, to be part of some community group that's doing something to, you know, community garden, or going down to the, you know, local city council, what have you, and trying to get them to add more bike lanes or whatever is a green choice for you to get that done. Do that. And then also get involved and try to, you know, with social media and what have you, and letter writing, whatever it takes to get to corporate entities and get them to provide more green products and to make the green choice themselves, to power their warehouses, you know, and what have you. The way Walmart has, actually. Walmart's been kind of a wonderful actor in this field, if you will, by putting lots of solar on the roof of their different, you know, warehouses. So whatever it is, get involved to make sure there's corporate responsibility and good legislation. That's something that we need to do besides our lifestyle choices. They all help each other.
Well,
Did I
a
kind of answer
comment,
it? Good. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead, Sarah. Forgive
no,
me.
no worries. A comment that might help you with the next question, but Robbie says, I met you many years ago at the very first Walden Woods walk to save the property. You took the time during the walk to talk to me and my wife about conservation. This has such an impact on us, and we've become even more concerned about the environment, and your impact on us both made us better conservationists. So they just want to thank you.
Thank them. It was a great walk. Bonnie Raitt was there. John Kerry was there. I was there. I think was yeah, there's a lot of wonderful
Oh,
people. Don, of course, is our leader. Sorry, go ahead, Kathi. Who else was there?
I was trying to remember who was there. Peter Weller was there.
Peter Weller was there.
Oh,
Was James
golly,
Taylor there? Am I remembering that right?
no.
No, Bonnie Raitt was there, though, I remember.
Bonnie was there. I get walk number 1 and walk number 2 confused.
Right, yeah, there's a lot of,
Kirstie Alley, I think.
who's that?
Kirstie Alley was there.
Kirstie Alley was there. But Don Henley, let me just take a second and talk about this friend of mine since 1972 that I met at the Troubadour in 1972. Not only is he a gifted, incredible songwriter, musician, he's, with Kathi, has preserved this incredible amount of acreage where Thoreau wrote and walked and lived, got his inspiration. Thousands of young people are exposed to his work now. We have it in temperature and humidity controlled environment there. We've promoted his lifestyle across the globe. We've done so much good work getting the idea of, you know, environmental conservation out to people around the world. It's just been fantastic. I'm so proud to know Kathi Anderson, to know Don Henley, and the way that they work together. And I'm so fortunate they allowed me to be part of this effort. It's been incredible. It's one of the great successes, environmental successes I've been involved with in my environmental career. You don't always win like this, but we've won so many ways with increased acreage and the wonderful works that are preserved. I'm just proud to know you, Kathi. That's all I'll say. And thank you, Don Henley, for getting us all together on this.
And perfect timing for the next question. How did you become part of the Walden Woods project so early on? You might have already answered that
Yeah,
through
that
through
was Don
Don.
Henley. He got me involved because we had talked about that stuff for years, and he always cared about it. He had solar before me, by the way. Don Henley had solar in his place up off Mulholland years before me. He was incredibly dedicated to the environment from the earliest days. So I looked to him for wisdom, and he was nice enough to include me when we started doing stuff. So go to walden.org, everybody. Check out what we're doing. It's incredible work. And if you can be part of it, we'd love to have you be part of it with us. So please check out walden.org.
And so many people think everyone in Hollywood or show business are strong environmentalists. Is this an accurate perception? Can you mention some challenges you had that you didn't expect in terms of persuading your colleagues to do the right thing for the earth?
Yeah, years ago, we weren't doing as well. By that, I mean, we would have, we'd have a rally and have the different actors, famous people in sports or whatever, and acting, record a PSA. Hi, we've got a park. We have to carpool more. We have to take public transportation, cut down on our pollution. We all can take a part in this. This was around 1990. We'd gather and have an event on the 20-year anniversary of Earth Day. It was 1990. I remember it like it was yesterday. Then everybody would be sent home in a limousine. It was like, wait a minute. This one day, I'm not saying everybody has to change their whole lifestyle, but this one day, can you maybe just do something a little better than that in transportation? So we had a big fundraiser to save the rainforest at 20th Century Fox around the same year, 1990, because again, the 20-year anniversary of Earth Day. And so I look over in the corner of that soundstage where they have caterers and what have you, and all sorts of different events about the rainforest and activities that we can do, all wonderful. But there's a big pile of wood called luan there, a plywood called luan. So I said, if we could just stop buying that wood that's sitting here on this very stage where they're having the fundraiser, I think we'll do a lot better. And they found an alternative to luan. They started using it. So there's ways, and you don't want to do it by scolding. You want to do it by being inclusive and saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm riding my bike. I'm taking public transportation, and I urge you to join me. See if you like it. I like it, and it makes financial sense, so try it.
And has your work with Chavez and the UFW in any way informed how you understand yourself in relation to ecological activism and political activism more generally?
Very much so. He is the bellwether. He and Dolores Huerta, who started the union together. She's still with us, the great Dolores Huerta. They are the ones who really gave in so many ways. Dolores was beaten when she was doing a protest about, social justice and what have you, and environmental justice. And so she's paid a huge price that she continues to show up and save the environment and get better working conditions for people working the fields to this day. Before they got involved with the United Farm Workers and created it, people didn't have the ability. There were no bathrooms out in the fields or anywhere near the fields. They didn't have fresh drinking water. They didn't have any shade. And so Cesar was able to get a lot of those things, and Dolores Huerta as well. They were able to get a lot better conditions for the workers. So what a legacy, what they're able to accomplish, and a strike fund and a health fund for the people working, doing the hardest work that nobody wants to do out there, picking the food so we can all eat. Just amazing people. I never met Dr. King. I never met Mother Teresa. I never met Gandhi, but I knew Cesar Chavez, and he was a hero of that ilk. He was really an incredible leader and a great, great man among us.
So a few fun questions coming up. Is it true you rode your bike to toast your bread?
Yes and no. It wasn't just to toast the bread. It wasn't a direct connection, but it was an accurate equation, if you will, or calculation. To make toast, you need 1,700 watts for 3 minutes. And you cannot, riding a bike, create 1,700 watts. Lance Armstrong, nobody is capable of that kind of, strength. But you can make 200 watts of power riding a bicycle with a generator attached. I've done it many times. 200 watts is doable. So if you need 3 minutes to toast, and I have the solar batteries in place already, they're sitting there waiting like a bank account to be deposited into and withdrawn from, just like a bank account. You can put electrons in and take them out very quickly. So if I rode that exercise bike for 15 minutes at 200 watts, then I could toast for 3 minutes. Does that make sense? It wasn't just a simple hookup. It would go into a bank account of batteries, if you will, and be withdrawn to make the toast. Another way I could say you could toast for, 2 slices. You could run a computer or a light all day with that same amount of power by riding for 15 minutes on a bicycle riding hard.
Yeah, you definitely answered that question.
Probably too technically. I'm a gearhead, so I get
no,
it messed up. People just shut up already. I get it. You put it in batteries. Shut up.
No, that's great. Thank you. Do you have a spirit animal?
Do I have a what?
A spirit animal.
I do not, but I probably need one. No, wait, I do have a spirit animal. Where is she? Bunny, come here. Where's Bunny? I know she went out. I opened the door for her. She's gone out. Okay. My daughter goes to a tow yard. Her car gets impounded. There's a dog there that almost got hit by a forklift. She brings the dog home. The dog knows that she saved her, but somehow the dog sees me and she just flips out. She won't leave my side. She's like next to me within a few feet of me all the time. She's very, very sweet. Her name is Bunny. So I have a dog in my twilight years here. I haven't had a dog since I was 5 years old. So it's very sweet to have a dog now. That is my spirit animal, is a dog named Bunny, a cute little dog.
If not for the environment, what social cause would you devote yourself to?
The farm workers, the people working in the fields. Well, that's environmental in nature, of course. Yeah, I would probably be doing that. I would help any way I can for the people who have such a huge role in putting food on our tables. Yeah, I think I would do that.
Hmm. And how many times have you walked around Walden Pond? Do you have a favorite Walden Pond and woods in Los Angeles, California?
I've walked around the real Walden Pond probably about 10 times in my life and loved each and every time. I do have my own Walden right here in Los Angeles. We have Griffith Park, which is well known, a big park in Los Angeles. There's a smaller park, but still quite big, quite a fair amount of acreage, right in the middle of Studio City, the city in which I live, the part of LA in which I live called Studio City. And it's up there going up to a town, up to a road you've heard about, I'm sure, called Mulholland Drive. So Mulholland and down to almost down to Ventura Boulevard, down to Laurel Canyon, certainly, there's a protected area that is just wonderful. It's a little mini park. And I, for years, rode my bike up there to get to Beverly Hills. It was like a back way you could go without being in traffic. And I've hiked it over the years, and it's just a beautiful area. It's called the Willacre Park. And then there's the Betty Deering Trail, this wonderful woman that helped us protect it, named Betty Deering. Just a great little mini Griffith Park right in the middle of my part of town. That's my Walden.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And great question. I love that question.
Me too.
Now a question about Studio City, which you just spoke about. 30 years ago, when I was with Greenpeace, you were kind enough to invite me and my spouse to your old Studio City home. Your new house sounds fabulous, but I'm wondering what's happened to the old place, which was a great model for those of us who wanted to improve existing houses.
It was a great home. It was built in 1936, and I loved it. I was there for 26 years. That'll probably be the longest I ever live in any home in my life. And I loved it. I had planned on that being my final home, but you have to be democratic with other family members who have other needs. Rochelle, my wonderful wife, wanted more closet space. That's how it started. We were going to build out the house that this Greenpeace friend is talking about, make it a little bit bigger. And pretty soon, when we were planning to do that and looked at different drawings, it was just too big for the lot. It was what we were trying to do didn't look right. So we had to sell the house. The current owner took the old house down. There's apparently some problems with, different problems with the house, with the structure and what have you. So they took it down and built a new, and that's their right. But I miss that old home. I didn't want to move, but now that I'm here, I certainly like this home a lot. It's just beautiful. I have a bigger rainwater tank than I've ever had, 10,000 gallons of rainwater storage. I have a gray water system that works great, 6 raised beds where I'm growing, vegetables, 9 kilowatts of solar electric on the roof, 2 big 4x10 solar panels for hot water. So I have a lot of stuff, but I have a great deal of nostalgia for that old home. And thank you to my friend from Greenpeace for remembering it. It was a great home.
Sarah,
And we
maybe
just have,
take 2 more questions.
yep,
Fine.
perfect. So next one. Hi, Ed. This is your journalist friend, Mike Szymanski. I've learned so much more hearing this talk, even though I've heard so many of your talks and love the books you've written. One question I've not asked is if there's a person living or one that has passed that you'd like to sit down with or take a hike with, who would it be?
Who would I like to talk to? I would certainly like to talk to Dr. King. I would just love to hear what he thought about where we are today. That would be, if such a thing were possible, I would sure like that. You know, MLK Day was just the other day, so he's certainly been on my mind, but I would hope, I'm certain he would have some wisdom about our current state of affairs, and I'd like to hear it.
So we'll wrap up with Anna Winter's question. She also just wanted to say you are the most generous and gracious individual, and it is a true honor to work with you and the Walden Woods Project. But her question to you, which I think is a great way to wrap up the program, is you are both a father and grandfather now and have been able to impart your wisdom and care for the environment to your children as your father did for you. Do you think young people today are inspired to make a difference regarding climate change independent of the many obstacles in front of them?
I think first of all, thank you to serve on the board with you. I'm so honored. You're such a great friend. You're such a great leader environmentally and within the board of the Walden Woods Project. Thank you so much for this question and for all you've done for me and for Don over the years. Thank you. Thank you. But I think kids, young people today, I think they're really motivated to do something because they see it as being for their own survival. And I don't think they're overstating. I don't think you can overstate the current situation we're in with the fires as we're now experiencing them. We've always had wildfires, but they've never been quite as damaging or as frequent. We've always had hurricanes, but never as large and as frequent. So they know that something's up. They know we have to do something. We have to be there for them. We can't just have this big party that we've had over the decades we've been alive, all us baby boomers. We have to help them clean up the mess before we turn the keys over to them. We haven't done that yet. So I think people are motivated. Young people are very motivated because they see it as a matter of survival. And we must help them. We can't abandon them.
Right. Yeah, I want to be mindful of your time, Ed. Thank you so much for staying on and answering all these questions. This was a terrific conversation. Thank you again so much. And I'm going to post everyone again. I know the chat you can see my comments, but I know people can't see each other's for some reason, but I'm going to post the link again for Ed's new memoir. And I misspoke before. The title of his other book we have in our bookshop is Living Like Ed. So you can also find that in our online bookshop. So with that, thank you again, Ed, and hope to see everybody next time at our in-person or virtual events.
Ed, thank you so much, dear friend. You're the best.
You are, Kathi. I'm just honored to know you, and you too, Sarah. Thank you for this great time together. Let's do it again. I miss you all. Perhaps we'll even do it in person. Thank you to the whole board of the Walden Woods Project. And I'm just so awed by being close to you all. Thank you. Thank you.
See you soon.
Yep. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.